An exclusive interview with NewsX, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has spoken with NewsX's editor-in-chief and expressed confidence in India's potential to become the third largest GDP. She highlighted the government's initiatives, emphasizing investments in public infrastructure and providing 50-year interest-free loans to states. The finance minister stressed the positive impact of these measures on India's economy, with significant progress seen in the post-COVID-19 era. She emphasized on the government's commitment and the dedication to foster economic growth and development, aiming to propel India towards sustained prosperity and inclusive growth through robust infrastructure and financial support to states. When questioned whether achieving the goal of becoming the third largest GDP is feasible despite India's current ranking at number 5, Sitharaman responded with unwavering confidence. Well, the interview, of course, will be playing out today at 9 p.m, but let's listen in to this excerpt for now.
Absolutely. That is why Honorable Prime Minister was very confident much before the elections were notified, much before the Code of Conduct. He said, "Give me a third term, I'll show you that India's economy will be the third largest." For a Prime Minister to state that, would he say it if he didn't have the confidence? After all, in the 10 years, from the 10th rank, we've reached the 5th. And it was sometime very amusing when former Finance Minister said it is an arithmetic inevitability. It'll happen. You don't need a magic wand. It'll happen now automatically. I'd like to remind him, they themselves said not till 2038 or something can we reach the 5th rank. We've reached it already. Your estimate was that much if it was arithmetic inevitability, whereas it has been achieved much before that. And again, 2004 to 14, hardly 2 ranks improved. So if it is an inevitability, why couldn't it reach that level even earlier? That's the speed at which inevitability will result. So I'm sorry, it is possible. We've done the work that we have lifted the economy from 10 to 5. Now we'll lift it from 5 to 3.
Sharad Kohli, senior economist, is joining us live. We also have Jayjeet Bhattacharya, President, Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. Vitali Nikore, economist, also joins us live. Professor Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary, is also live with us on the broadcast. Sharad Kohli, let me begin with you first. The FM presenting her report card saying the government is very clear that they will, if re-elected to power, the NDA government that is, transition India from the 5th largest economy to the 3rd largest economy. Poll pitch or practically achievable? What's your take?
Thank you so much, Uday, and good evening to my fellow panelists and NewsX viewers. Well, I love the term mathematical inevitability. Well, if we keep growing at this pace, thanks to government's policies, then of course mathematical inevitability comes into picture. And to answer your question very simply, yes, we would be there. In my own estimate, using the principles of mathematical inevitability, I'm putting it in inverted commas, we should be there within the next 2.5 to 3 years. That's what my calculation says, because we might just be growing faster than what we are growing right now after elections, because the policy, there's a lot of policy reforms in the process. Now, it's all in the mind. If Congress is probably regretting why it missed the bus, it is all in front of you. There's nothing to be. If 25 crore people can come out of multi-dimensional poverty index, move from being poor to being lower middle class. A lot of people from middle class, lower middle class moving to middle class. A lot of people from middle class moving to the upper middle class. And then from upper middle class, there are a lot of flourishing businesses where people have built their net worth and so and so. Then the mathematical inevitability ultimately was in the Congress's perspective. It feels that probably it doesn't want to give the credit to the government for obvious reasons. So it's saying that this was a mathematical inevitability, but otherwise there is, if you look at the numbers, look at any number for that matter. Look at our forex reserves, look at our tax collection. In fact, my own calculations today, our team was sitting with me today, and I have a feeling that the July budget, which is going to come after this government is elected, I don't see any doubt there, although there are a lot of speculations being made, the July budget for the first time in the history of the country would be a rupees 50 lakh crore plus budget. Rupees 50 lakhs crore plus budget, because our tax collections and both direct and indirect, whether it's GST or the income tax, and for the first time, the personal income tax collections have overtaken the corporate tax collection, which means, so, I mean, this is just not just a number, because when the personal income tax collection overtakes your corporate tax collection, this is indicative of the fact that the prosperity, even if it is to, 2 crore people, well, the downside is that about 2 crore people are looking after 142 crore people, although everybody pays tax as far as GST is concerned. But talking of the direct tax, the prosperity is percolating down to the people. So if there are those 2 crore people who are paying that much of tax, they are also employing people down there. They are also paying to their health, the domestic health, the maid. I mean, they are spending everywhere. Primarily, the country is consumption driven. So if people have money in hand, if people have income in hand, I think the economy moves on its own. But all you need to do is to make sure that people have money. And when will people have money in hand? When your economy is growing, when your economy is prospering, when your exports have reached $775 billion plus, when your direct tax collection exceed your estimated revenue, the revised estimates, when your indirect tax collection also exceeds your, revised estimates, that is when your fiscal deficit is very much on track. When you have all economic parameters, I can just go on because I have very good 3 learned panelists waiting to speak. So I will probably limit myself because I can just go on and burn away the rest of your time. I've got so many numbers with me. I mean, to talk of the number of schemes, the number of policy that this government has launched, the number of reforms being done by this government. We can just go on and on. We need to do a good, Uday, 3 to 4 hour non-stop show to enable all of us to list down the achievements which are now being felt. So if a group of people called Congress or whatever, they don't want to appreciate it, it's their problem. I agree with the finance minister. It is their problem. They want to perceive it in a different way. They don't want to concede their defeat. They don't want to concede that they were a failure, if I put it in different terms, or they did not get anywhere near what we have reached today. That's purely their problem, because we as economists, we will simply look at numbers. We will not look at the political side. We will look at the numbers. If there is a political touch to what we speak because the numbers say something else, then so be it. That's not our problem. But the fact of the matter is that we are far, far away from where we were in 2014, from being the fragile 5 to being in the top 5 is no mean achievement, Uday. Over to you.
Yes, let me take that straight across to Jayajit Bhattacharya as well. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, what do you believe have been the biggest achievements of the government under FM Nirmala Sitharaman and Prime Minister Modi economically in the last 5 years that you believe could possibly be a game changer for them in the election as well? Or do you believe the economy is not a strong point of the NDA government? What's your take and position?
I think the numbers speak for themselves. So we jumped from at a rank of 10th GDP globally to a GDP of the 5th rank, and we are so closely poised to becoming the 3rd ranked GDP. That is not an easy task to achieve, because as you go up the ladder in terms of GDP ranking, it gets tougher and tougher. If you look at, let's say, from the previous 10 years as a comparison, it took Brazil to go from 13th rank to 7th rank in that period of 2004 to 2014. India could manage only to go from the 12th rank to the 10th rank. And therefore, it's very interesting to note that, somebody is quoting the mathematical inevitability that India will grow. If that is the case, then Venezuela should have grown, Congo should have grown, and many other countries should have grown, which did not grow. If it is mathematically inevitable that India will grow, then why are we even bothered about elections and trying to find the right kind of government which will push us? Fortunately, the numbers, as I mentioned, speak for themselves that we had done an excellent job in the last 10 years. Now, not only did we grow as an economy compared to the global economy, it is very important to put it in comparison with the global economy, because if the global economy was also growing and you grew at a much lower rate, but faster than what you were growing traditionally, and then we do chest thumping saying we did a great job, that is not really a great job. The whole economy globally was growing from 2004 to 2014. And therefore, India was also lifted, but not at the pace that we needed to. Therefore, our rank went from only 12th to 10th. We could only grow 2 ranks up. Now, the point and the major changes that happened was the structural reforms. We did go through pains between 2004 and 2014. There were pains which were induced because of the structural changes. But we now have a very strong foundation, which is what is helping us propel forward. Which is why many people are, in fact, all noted economists are absolutely sure that India will be the third largest economy in the next 2.5 to 3 years because of the fundamental work that has been done. Now, while developed economies are reeling between recession and getting out of recession, paying the cost for their misdeeds during COVID, and misdeed in terms of economic misdeed, in terms of having a very loose economic policy, a loose monetary policy, and somebody has to pay for it. What this government did was a two-pronged approach that ensure that there is growth happening, but also ensure that the most vulnerable sections of the society are taken care of, which is where we had DBT being used as a very, very powerful tool. And so that, the money did not go to the rich, unlike in Germany, where they said 30,000 euros will be given to every business which is impacted by COVID. So every business gets 30,000 euro. Now, every business does not need 30,000 euro, but somebody is paying for it. Now, who's paying for it? It's the taxpayers. And how are the taxpayers paying? They're paying from the money that was given to them by the government. And therefore, what is happening is that you're getting larger inflow of money into the economy and not any products and producers being created, which is the perfect recipe for inflation, perfect recipe for slowdown, which is exactly what has happened with Germany, which is happening with Japan, and so on and so forth. We escaped all of that because of very prudent fiscal management, financial management, and the way we distributed support to the vulnerable sections. So while we saved the vulnerable sections of the society, we also ensured that we have a responsible fiscal system, which ensures that a monetary policy had a good base for standing on, and which ensured that we are now the best poised in the world in
Yes.
terms of the next spurt of growth.
Absolutely. And do you believe that this this transition is inevitable, Mitali? From fifth largest to third largest economy. That's the poll pitch, of course. As Nirmala Sitharaman says, Prime Minister Modi has said, give me another chance and I will make this transition happen. Do you believe it will happen, or do you believe this is something just for the elections right now?
Hi, Uday. Thanks a lot for having me, and also, completely agree with some of my learned colleagues here. I think, this question of inevitability is equally applicable to all, right? It's a result of good decision making. The fact that we are seeing the fruits of good decision making of the last 10 years in the growth rates that we are witnessing today gives me hope that we will continue to see good decision making from this administration if they come back to power and get us onto a track, onto, say, the third largest economy or even beyond that, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, what is the evidence for this? The evidence for this comes from 2 or 3 major pillars. The first one is the focus on infrastructure development. Infrastructure development is a long-term investment. Programs like Bharatmala, Sagarmala, Gati Shakti, all of these coming together have brought down the logistics cost, which is the backbone of economic development. The second thing being, of course, what Jagjeet mentioned about social protection. But the third thing is also digital India. It's not only about physical connectivity, but digital connectivity, taking a lot of marginalized groups together and making them part of that growth story. If Digital India had not been there, a lot of women, for example, that I talk to on a daily basis would not have achieved and got these direct benefit transfers that were given during COVID. And I also want to say, at the end of the day, how can it be an inevitability to achieve the growth that we achieved when COVID-19 was happening? It was a disaster that nobody could have foreseen. Unless you take good decisions in such a crisis scenario, you cannot steer your economy to the point that it is at today. So going forward, very clearly, there are 3 or 4 areas where I'm already seeing good decision making taking place. For example, investments in the green industry. If we are seeing so many investments coming up in electric vehicles, in solar panels, in wind energy, these are the future industries. And we are seeing a push towards these industries already. And these are the industries which will take us to the position of the third largest economy.
Yes. Clearly, of course, the path has been set out, Ajay Dua, and we do hope, of course, that India will achieve it. But currently, the FM presenting her roadmap, the Congress criticizing it. How much do you believe the economy and the current economic performance will sway voters in the ongoing Lok Sabha polls?
I have absolutely no knowledge about that. How the voter behaves, that's not. I'm neither a psephologist nor I understand what works on the voters or what doesn't work. I'm purely talking about what the finance minister has said, and I think what she said is absolutely based on facts. She has made factual statement that we have moved up to the 5th position and that we are likely to move to the 3rd position if the current trend continues, which is fact-driven and absolutely right. Having said that, the positions, as we all know, depend there. It's a comparative. Who is above us, what pace he's going, or that country is growing, what pace we are growing, or so. So it is we must do well, but at the same time, we must make sure that Germany and Japan, who are above us at say $4.6 trillion, being the GDP of Germany, and Japan at about 4.2, as against reportedly ours at 3.75 or 3.8, how the comparison, how these relative countries, how the countries move relatively. There are problems in Europe, Ukraine war, the problems arisen now because of the Middle East, all this, kind of things. Probably their movement will not be as fast as perhaps the countries which are not affected by these factors. And the point I have in mind is the US. US is financing everybody, financing including the defense expenditure. Its economy is growing, and these European countries are at the receiving end, so they probably will not move as fast as their potential would have been. So that gives me added confidence that India would be able to reach the 3rd position, maybe 2 years, 4 years, but it is somewhere on the anvil that we are targeting, have the potential for it. Number one. Number two, and I'm not in any way giving a dissent or any such thing, I would say that the growth would be more sustainable if there was not the asymmetry, geographical asymmetry, which we see in the country. The southern states are growing much faster than the eastern and the central, and maybe the western is a little, it's all right, probably as per the average, but states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra, and even Karnataka are on a different growth trajectory. They are actually creating jobs for people from the east. The amount of migration which occurs now from eastern India to the southern India, where the wage rates are high because their own fertility ratios have come down below 1.5 and well below the replacement level of 2.1. So the point is, this is one. I'd like to see much greater symmetry so that the country as a whole makes the process sustainable. Second, I would also like to see, Uday, that we are no longer driven by capital expenditure of the government, center and the states. The states' capex in the last 2 years is a 1/3 more than previously, and the center expenditure also is remarkably higher. The budget may be 50, what is expected, that 50 lakh crore budget. Yes, there will be more, but the process becomes sustainable when the private sector also starts undertakes the capital formation across the board. Private sector, and I'm sorry to say this, private sector growth for employment in the large companies of India, and I should know it, having dealt with it in different facets of it, including from the labor point of view, the capital intensity is growing, not labor intensity. And that gets me to my final point, that there are certainly, employment data in the country is not so easily available. Government says 3%, CMI says 7%. It may be somewhere in between or somewhere, but the fact is we do see that the wages, real wages in the rural areas, particularly in agriculture, which is where labor should remain in rural areas, but not in agriculture. 250 million people, largely women, have enrolled for our Manrega scheme. That's out of 250 million, 150 million in rural areas are enrolled there. Fact is, we can do with much fewer people in agriculture. Just to give you an example, in China, 2.5 times the higher production than in India. Number of labor employed 170 million. In India, 250 million, which means everybody is underemployed, the wages are low, and we are too many people there. We need to move them. You can't move them to manufacturing. It's certainly not, no data is saying that manufacturing in India is labor intensive. Services, we'll wait and see what happens. Services has a lot to do with education, employability, etc. So my concern is, how do we increase agriculture productivity, make the process sustainable, but yet not have to shift these people to the urban areas and in formal industry, but keep them in rural areas, basing them on agriculture processing, all kinds of things related to agriculture production. So these are the challenges, but I'm quite sure that what the Honorable Finance Minister said, we are well on way towards that.
Right. And how much do you believe that this will sway the voter, Dr. Bhattacharya? How much are people going to vote on economic issues, with the vision, of course, being put forth by the FM and being countered by the Congress on the other hand, claiming that nothing has happened and, they want to redistribute wealth and, they believe, of course, in the, the industry, rather the industrialist government nexus has come to a peak under this government. How much is all of that going to actually sway voter? What's your sense?
Yeah, I'll borrow from Professor Ajay Dua and say that I really wouldn't be able to know how the voters will behave, but still let me attempt to answer the question. Is that unfortunately, at an individual level, the game theoretical behavior starts, which is what is optimal for me, what is the money I'm getting in my pocket, and then what are the promises being made to me. Now, as a voter, I don't know the pains happening in Sri Lanka or Pakistan or Germany or Japan. I only see my pain, even though academicians and economists will point out that the pain seen in India is significantly lower than the pain seen elsewhere. But as a voter, I'll still see pain that I'm going through. That's point one. Second, if somebody comes and says, I'll take away money from Uday and give it to you, I'll say that's great. Now, is that great for either Uday or the entire country? That is not, great by any stretch of imagination. Now, a large part of the population still thinks that they can get money from others. However, the good part is that a large part of the population has actually become better off than what they were 10, 15 years ago. And therefore, some of the fear is that their own wealth will be taken away when such things are being talked about. So it is a significantly different situation to when communism spread all over the world, and the tyranny of communism that led to deaths of millions of people in China, in Cambodia, by the Khmer Rouge, and in USSR and so on and so forth. It's very easy to dominate people by giving such simplistic arguments that I'll make you rich by taking money from others. To build wealth and to enable people to build wealth, we need to do everything that, in fact, Mithali was referring to, which is I need to build the infrastructure, the railways, the roads, to enable those who are able to build capital and generate wealth to do it far more efficiently. Therefore, jobs can be created. The other situation also that we face as we are in 2024 is that with the advent of technology, it is not possible to have any sector which generates millions of jobs suddenly. Earlier you would build a railway line and it would generate thousands of jobs. And again, as Professor Dua was saying, you cannot have manufacturing which will create 10,000 jobs. It will not happen. And therefore, the productivity of every person has to be extremely high, which is why, if you are able to crack that code, India will clearly become the number one economy in the next 20, 30 years.
Yes.
But the point is that we need to ensure that there is education being provided so that the productivity goes up and take people away from agriculture, which is longer term reforms that we need to do.
Okay, let's leave it at that. We've run completely out of time. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.